Hello everyone and welcome to Season 6, Episode 24 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches of 2021 with match number 27 on our list, which is the World of Stardom title match between the champion Utami Hayashishita and the challenger Syuri from the Stardom Tokyo Dream Cinderella Special Edition event held on June the 12th of 2021. Now, if you know me, if you follow me on social media, if you've paid attention, to the first season of this show, the 2020 Countdown, you know that I follow Joshi, you know that I follow Stardom. So it would seem like a given that this match would appear on the list. You might potentially be a little bit surprised with where it falls on the list and maybe expected it a bit higher. I've talked about this in these countdowns before, where occasionally I will get a match that ultimately I know should probably end up on the countdown, but I have a really hard time positioning it. The last one that I really remember was in last season when I ran through the NXT matches. I had the Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano take over New Orleans match, and that was the one where, like, it's a good match, it was considered amazing at the time, it's got, historical value for better or worse, but, does it hold up as well as it did at the time? And then that's where I fall with this match. This match, if you're unfamiliar with it, was the highest rated women's match of all time by Dave Meltzer. He broke his 5-star scale with this match and gave it 5.5 stars. It got an absolutely tremendous amount of buzz online. And when I watched it at the time, I kind of had some problems with it. I thought it was good. I thought maybe I was underselling it a little bit and that I wasn't completely getting the hype that everybody else was. So I decided, when figuring out what the top 50 matches of 2021 were going to be, that it would certainly be worth a rewatch. And that's exactly what I gave it. And it was interesting because in ways I enjoyed it more than I did the initial time. In other ways, I found even bigger holes with it. But ultimately, how this match made me feel upon its completion, the fact that it generated so much buzz for Stardom at the time and Joshi Pro Wrestling in general, it ultimately leads to its very worthy inclusion on this list. I couldn't even go top half with it. All of the matches that are going to follow in this countdown, I find significantly better than this one was. This match, to me, it's funny because these two were kind of set up at, through this match as these big time rivals, and they would go into rematches throughout the years, or throughout the year, I should say. But in a way, I didn't find that they had a lot of chemistry, and maybe I'm in the minority with that. Both of them can take a hard hit. Both of them, specifically Syuri, can hit very hard. And both of them, as proven throughout their matches against each other, are more than capable and willing to take some insane risks and bumps. That said, I find that the transitions in their matches and everything between the moves to be really lacking. And that might sound like, nitpicky, smart mark, kind of over criticism, but I found it really glaring in their matches, especially on the rewatches. I rewatched both this one and their match at the end of the year for this countdown. The one from the end of the year doesn't make this countdown. This was the better of the two, in my opinion. So, don't expect that one to come later. But it really feels like some awkwardness and some kind of just, the wheels turning to think like, okay, what's the next move I need to go to? And, repetition of big moves and things like that. It feels like, on paper, this match has all of the right elements, but when it all comes together, it's a little clunky. That said, with this one, this match goes very long. Ultimately, it ends up running 43 minutes, bell to bell to bell to bell, which I'll explain when we get to it. So, it's very lengthy. Coming into the last portion of the match, that kind of clunkiness and that awkwardness and the lying around and the not being quite sure what to do, it actually adds to it. And that's why I prefer this one to the second match, where this one, by the end of it, you as the viewer feel exhausted, but not, in a bad way, like you watched a long, boring match, in a good way that, you feel like you've went through this war with these women. So it almost kind of, creates this great viewer atmosphere, where it really sells the punishment that they're going through and the struggle that they went through for 43 long minutes of brutality. So with this match, I'm able to give it more of a free pass. The follow-up match, it goes shorter. I want to say like 10-ish minutes shorter, but it may be, less than that. But it doesn't really have that elongated, feel to it it makes those kind of misses and the lying around and the long transitions. It doesn't make it make as more sense as it does in this match, if you get what I'm trying to convey. So the match itself here, it's, got a really big fight feel to it. This was a huge show for Stardom. This was a big match that they hyped. It's got like this generational battle to it where Utami Hayashishita is, was a rookie just a couple short years ago. She's only, I think, like 23-ish years old at the time that this match happened. Syuri, not to say that she's old, she's roughly my age. I want to say she's like 34, 35. But she's presented, as the senior wrestler here. And there is a little bit of angst. Syuri kind of went the MMA route, came into Stardom later. Hayashishita was this very quick rise, up to winning the World of Stardom title, the red belt as it's called in Stardom. So she kind of got this push out of the gate. So, you kind of got this feeling that, okay, this was this generational battle, very similar to the Yamato and Shun Skywalker Dragon Gate match that I talked about in the last video on the countdown. So a very similar feel to that one. We start, with an intense lockup, both break clean, very good opening wrestling. Syuri seems to have, the advantage there with the MMA background. And there's this great early moment where she gets full mount and she decides, rather than rain down any strikes, she's going to keep it clean, and she transitions to an armbar attempt. And we get to this point where, Utami is getting outclassed on the mat, so she decides to use, her strengths, which is her strength. She's definitely got a power advantage here, and she mows Syuri down with a big shoulder block. And at that point, the match kind of heats up, and it's like, okay, we're done screwing around here. This is going to be a fight. It's for the big title. Like, if that's the way we're going to go, we're going to go hard with it. And we get, this forearm trading. And shockingly, Utami kind of wins out a little bit on that. So Syuri really needs to go into overdrive very early in the match, and she spears her clean through the ropes, hits a big, running penalty kick on the apron, and hits a Hurricane Rana off the apron. But the first kind of example of this match where you get, like, just a big momentum swings, but with nothing really in between it to cause it, where, like, somebody will hit a big move and pick the other person up, and then they hit a big move, right? As opposed to finding these natural openings in the match. So, after Syuri gets this big Rana off the apron, Utami kind of comes back and, like, hits a shin breaker on the ring apron, and then, uses that as a target and starts to work the leg of Syuri. And Syuri's, a big striker. I mentioned that UFC, that MMA background that she has. So, taking out the leg kind of negates those kicks. So, it makes logical sense. But again, it's the first kind of sense that, this match maybe kind of just feels like a jumble of moves as opposed to much in between. Syuri, at this point, she's getting the leg worked. She knows that she needs to up the aggression. She gets some brutal kicks to the chest and the back, a bunch of stomps and things like that. And she really comes out as the aggressor in this contest, as the one that needs to win the title belt, whereas Hayashishita just has to, she's got the champion's advantage here. Syuri ends up getting, like, this brutal kick to the face. Utami bails to the floor. It seems to knock her completely loopy. Either she was pretty knocked out and rocked from this kick, or just a masterful selling job. All of the seconds are out there, like, dumping water on her. And she definitely seems a little bit out to lunch. But again, we talk about these moves. She gets, like, a flash German suplex into the buckles. And the German suplex would be a recurring theme for her throughout the match. So I don't actually mind that one here. It kind of, came as, like, the surprise flash. She goes for an air raid crash off the buckles, which is a huge move to hit really early in the match, but it kind of sold that, she was really reeling and on the ropes after that kick and knew she had to go to her big guns really early on. But Syuri's able to counter out of that, hit like a cheeky Nando sort of kick, a big double knee gut buster. And then she goes back to the well with the PK on the apron that she hit earlier. But this time, Hayashishita is able to move, and Syuri takes like a wild, just straight back bump to the floor. And, I talk about these two really willing to take risks. And, at that point, the match really escalates into a lot of just big, nasty, brutal, high-risk moves. Pretty much immediately following that, Utami hits an air raid crash on the ring apron. That was brutal. They would actually go back to that spot in their rematch in December, and they would miss the apron with it. And so it was basically like an air raid crash from the apron all the way down to the floor. That was just psychotic. But here they landed on the apron. Still a crazy spot, don't get me wrong. But then we get, like this extended, elongated follow-up period where, Utami's, selling the move herself and really isn't capable of doing anything. So all of a sudden, Syuri blasts her with the drop kick and goes back on offense. She tries to hit like a satellite DDT on the floor and it doesn't look great. So it kind of turns into like a sloppy head scissors and then she nails her with a normal DDT. But then, same sort of thing. She decides to go for this big, running move down the ramp, whatever it was going to be. I believe it was going to be like a quesadilla bulldog that Syuri sometimes does. But Utami counters that and just hits this disgustingly scary wheelbarrow German suplex into the apron where like just the back of Syuri's head hits the apron. It is super scary. It is disgusting. Syuri just breaks the count at 19, so you get some good heightened drama there. And it leads to this great moment too where Syuri's in the ring and just like Utami was earlier, knocked loopy with the kick, she's kind of out of it and she just stands there with her arms open, basically being like, come on, and eats a missile drop kick, eats a backdrop driver. Hayashishita goes for one of her signatures. I'll call it the spin doctor, which is what John Silver calls it. It's like the torture axe spun out in the powerbomb. AJ Styles, I believe, was the first person I ever saw do it. I don't know if Hayashishita has a fancy name for it or not, but it's one of her finishers. So she goes for that, and Syuri counters that into a DDT, grabs the rolling armbar, going back to the armbar in the opening, sequence of the match. But Utami gets the ropes. They kind of use these submissions back and forth where wherever Syuri gets an opportunity, she tries to get the cross arm breaker. Wherever Utami gets an opportunity, she tries to use a rear naked choke. So we get some spots back and forth with that. Utami gets a German suplex to cut Syuri off again, but while she's like seated on the top rope, so big bump there. We get like a big slap exchange that, Syuri's able to win out, but that she runs into a big slap. So all of these great strike exchanges with the back and forth momentum swings. Spin doctor attempt again gets countered into a Kiwi roll, which Syuri likes to use. Basically we end up, with this sequence where both of them are trading forearms and the time runs out at the 30-minute time mark. So Stardom title matches, 30-minute time limits, not 60 minutes like you'll see in a lot of promotions. And with this one here, I remember watching this spoiler-free. I'd heard the hype, but I didn't know who won. I didn't know the finish. And, we got to the 30-minute draw, and I was kind of like, okay, I feel like there's a lot of meat still on the bone for this match, especially, with it getting such a high ranking from Meltzer and all of the hype that it was getting online. So we go to this 30-minute draw and everybody's kind of left unfilled. And it leads to this restart. So basically both women say, we want to keep going. We want to restart the match. So it goes into sudden death overtime, hence the bell that I mentioned earlier on. And the overtime is really what kicks this match into overdrive. Not that it wasn't good before, it had some big moves, it had some nice sequences, again, felt a little disjointed, but the overtime is really where the emotion in the match starts to pick up and the exhaustion in the match starts to pick up, and that makes it really compelling, and it becomes this like sloppy kind of dogfight of a match, but that ultimately really draws you in as the viewer. So when we get the restart, they immediately go back to trading forearms, but this time it's a lot faster paced and not labored like it was before. Both of them know they need to win and they need to win quickly. Just like earlier, Utami kind of wins the strike exchange, which, you know, is a little bit surprising to me. But then Syuri just like blasts her with a bunch of clinch knees, hits a big lawn dart and a DDT, slow to follow up, you know, after the burst of energy to start the match, and only gets a 2 off of that. Again, we get, you know, rolling armbar exchanges, into rear naked choke exchanges. Utami gets another flash German suplex out of nowhere and kind of starts bringing Syuri back into the strike exchanges, which again, I kind of find surprising, but makes sense when Utami has been winning these throughout the matches. So she brings her, you know, into a kind of baits her into doing a slap exchange, and Syuri takes her down and grabs the full mount again. And this was a moment that I really liked in this match where just, you know, the change where at the start, you know, she got that full mount, didn't go for the MMA ground and pound, instead went for the armbar. Here she's got that full mount and she starts just raining down slaps on her. Ends up transitioning it into the armbar. It makes sense, that's been her target throughout the match, but this time, you know, there was no kind of goodwill and respect shown there. She had the advantage and she was going to take advantage of it. There is another beautiful moment too that they would end up replicating in their other title match in December that didn't look as smooth then as it did here, where Syuri hits like this front lung blower kind of out of nowhere, but Utami just falls on her for the cover. And again, I loved that because it really shows the exhaustion of you know, they hit this move and they basically just stay where they land, but that's with, you know, the person that was doing the move on the bottom. So it was, again, just kind of something small that really kind of helped build into what this match was trying to accomplish. We get another moment too of just pure exhaustion, be it intentional or not, where Syuri tries for like a Ricola bomb, like a straight jacket power bomb, and tries to like deadlift Utami up into it, and she just like barely gets her up and hits it. So again, it's kind of sloppy. It doesn't look great, but it really sells the exhaustion that they're both going for. Syuri hits like a big single arm butterfly suplex off the top and transitions that into a Kimura, transitions that into a double armbar when Utami tries to grab the rope. So all really good stuff there, you know, tying into the arm work that she's been doing. We get big near falls off PKs and spin doctors and emerald fusions and power bombs and, you know, everything that they'd hit earlier in the match or teased. But again, this is another point, you know, where it's one hits a move, can't put the other away. Okay, now the other hits a move, can't put her away. Oh, now back to the first woman, you know, to hit another move. So again, it kind of feels like trading moves back and forth, but, you know, without those natural reasons for the change outside of, you know, somebody picks somebody up and then that other person hits another move. So almost like the move equivalent of a strike exchange where you kind of just stand around waiting to get hit by the other person. It's kind of how it feels. It doesn't really work for me, but again, you know, it's late in the match. They've been going a long time. They're both, you know, a little loopy. So I'm willing to let it go a little bit here, you know, for the sake of the total package of the match. Syuri ends up getting like a big head kick late in the match. Utami just starts throwing like these wild Vader hammers, like those kind of like overhand forearm shots that I really, really liked, and swings like this wild lariat. Syuri hits like a spinning back fist and a head kick. Utami hits another lariat, but Syuri like absorbs that and weathers the storm and hits another head kick, and they both collapse. And we get an interesting finish because we end up getting a double knockout. So the referee counts to 10. Neither can get up. Like the 30-minute draw, it kind of feels unfulfilling. You know, you're wanting to see an ending here. But like the 30-minute draw, unlike the 30-minute draw, I should say, where it kind of feels like they get their legs cut out from under them and the match just sort of ends, you know, it builds to this crescendo where they've both given each other everything they could for 43 minutes and neither can stand at this point. So it's a better way to go about the draw. It would lead to a rematch. These two would actually face again in the Stardom. They do like a G1 sort of tournament thing. that for whatever reason off the top of my head, I cannot think of the name of right now. But they do, the 5-star GP, that's it. So they would meet again in the 5-star GP. They would go to a 20-minute draw there. Syuri would end up winning that tournament, would challenge Hayashishita again at the end of the year. They would go to a no time limit match, title for title. Syuri was the SWA champion, a belt that was kind of meaningless that she helped elevate, and would ultimately end up winning the title in that match. And a take off the ending here where they kind of repeat the same strike sequence at the end, but this time Syuri's able to stay standing and hit, one final move to put Hayashishita away. But what really kind of sells this match for me and drives the point home is actually the aftermath. So after we get this double KO, the visual is just really, really great, where they strap the belt on Hayashishita and she can't even get up from the mat. She's lying on the mat, having this title put on her, and she just looks completely out of it and completely rocked. And Syuri, has tears in her eyes, from not being able to get the job done. And she literally crawls over to Hayashishita, who's now sitting on the mat with the belt around her, not knowing where she's at. And she just slaps her in the face. And it wasn't disrespectful. It was basically just like, I wanted to keep fighting and I would have beat you if I could. And ultimately that's what we would see later. So it's this great kind of bow on this package of a match. This match isn't perfect. I don't think, it's really worthy of the acclaim that it got, but I'm happy it got the acclaim because it no doubt got more eyes on Stardom and more eyes on Joshi Pro Wrestling, which, I couldn't be happier about. It's, in my opinion, not the best Stardom match of the year. We'll see more from Stardom later on in the countdown. But, it was ultimately a really kind of great thrill ride of a match. If you can overlook, some glaring flaws, in my opinion, that this match has, there's a lot of pieces here that make it a compelling package, that make it a worthy inclusion on this list. You can check this match out on Stardom World. Their service is great, so I highly recommend it. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again next time as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.